Hello, and as millions of us prepare to head abroad for our summer holidays, there's a warning that many of us could actually be travelling without valid medical cover, all because we haven't declared our full and up-to-date medical history. New research from Admiral shows close to 6 million of us from the UK haven't declared a medical condition when taking out travel insurance, despite more than a quarter of us having experienced illness or a medical emergency while abroad. My name's Mike Young, and to chew all this over with me today are Jamie Hersant, who's Head of Travel Claims at Admiral, and alongside him is probably the most respected, the most experienced and insightful travel journalist in the UK today, and that's Simon Calder. Thank you very much both for being here. Simon, if I start with you, how important is travel insurance?
Well, absolutely essential if you are heading abroad, and fortunately, thanks to the ferociously competitive travel insurance market we're able to enjoy in the UK, you are going to find that there is fantastic value out there, and that includes everybody who's doing the right thing, declaring pre-existing medical conditions and getting the right policy at the right price. That's all the travel insurers want to do. They want to deliver excellent service to you, but they've got to know the facts.
Jamie, why do you think travel insurance is perhaps more important than ever for customers?
I think that the world feels like it's becoming ever more unstable, and there's more events happening all the time that you'll want cover for. If you look at it, you know, it's probably the biggest single purchase you make outside of your typical monthly household bills, and you need to protect that properly. So buying travel insurance with a good product that meets your needs is really key to doing that.
Simon, how would you describe that current travel climate at the moment when we look at the volatile geopolitics right now?
Yeah, actually, because there's been a lot of reluctance to book and people are tending to book later, there's some fantastic deals out there. I've been buying flights and holidays like there's no tomorrow because they're simply at such good prices.
Jamie, how do customers make sure they choose the right level of travel insurance? We've heard some of the worries of today.
Yeah.
What level of travel insurance should people be getting?
I think the first thing is to make sure that it's not a rush purchase. I think there's too often you're off to the airport, it's the last thing you think about, and that can sometimes be weeks or months after you've actually booked your holiday. And you need to think about a few key areas. So things like cancellation cover and medical cover are the sort of key things. So have you got enough cover of cancellation for your holiday? You don't need spending £5,000 on a holiday and only having £1,500 worth of cover if something happens from that perspective. You also need to think about, are there any activities that you want to do while you're away that might be a little bit different to the norm, and check with the policy that you've got is going to cover you so that if anything happens, you're going to be fully covered. And then also if you're going for an extended trip, you know, outside of a typical 31 days or a 1 or 2 week holiday, you want to make sure that you've got full cover for that, because often policies will stop at a certain point.
I was astonished to actually learn from the research that Admiral has done that actually fewer than half of people take out insurance at the same time as booking. And that strikes me as completely irrational, because travel insurance, which none of us ever wants to claim on, but it starts delivering value from the moment you buy it, which should be at the point of purchase of your trip, because it just gives you the insurance, the assurance that if anything were to go awry between your taking out the insurance and the actual trip, that you would be covered for cancellation. So that's a really important benefit. We love looking forward to holidays, and anticipation is a really important part of it, but so is knowing that you've got peace of mind because you are covered.
And surely, Jamie, when in doubt, ask.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot of information online before you buy a policy, so you can check the cover you're getting, and you can do an online quote to make sure it's going to cover what you need. And you can also ring your insurer if you really need to from that perspective. But lots of information out there before you buy.
Simon, how savvy, or perhaps lacking in savviness, are travellers now, do you think, when it comes to travel insurance? I mean, I remember working on a consumer programme on Radio 4 where we spoke to you a great deal. And this was around the time of the pandemic, and we learned a lot then around what you needed to know when your holiday was just disappearing and being cancelled because of a global pandemic on that occasion.
Yes, and look, I spend a lot of time answering questions from travellers. One which very frequently turns up is, oh, my flight's been cancelled, can I claim on my travel insurance? Well, generally the answer is no, because it's not the insurer's responsibility at that stage. It is very clearly the airline. If an airline cancels a flight, then they have to find you a suitable alternative, ideally getting you to your destination on the original day. And so your travel insurance isn't involved in that. Same if you book a package holiday and for some reason it can't go ahead, well, that's fine, you will get a full refund. So be clear about what insurance covers. I mean, it is there to look after you for typically accidents, heaven forbid, illnesses abroad. That's the main benefit, but of course it will usually cover other things. If you're caught up in the world's worst traffic jam on the way to the airport and you have to rearrange your trip, that will help. So it's there to bring you benefits, and the vast majority of us won't claim, and we will, I think, be very happy that we had the cover there. So I suppose addressing the, unfortunately, many people who just decide to wing it, I just say it's not worth it. Travel insurance, even if you have got a pre-existing condition, is likely to be very competitively priced, and compared with the cost of your trip, it's a very small amount.
Jamie, what are the typical things that you see that cause particular issues for customers?
Yeah, I think the key thing is that the customer should declare absolutely everything to make sure that they've got the right level of cover, and probably health is the biggest one around that. So there are a few things the insurers typically will want to know. So whether you visited a GP in the last couple of years, even if it's for a relatively minor situation, you had some headaches, acid reflux, that kind of thing. That might not seem a lot, but you're better off telling them about it. Anything that's a bit more serious in the last 5 years, so heart conditions, respiratory conditions, and anything you're perhaps taking ongoing medication for. And the other thing probably is about waiting lists. So if, for example, you feel like you've been to the doctor for what is relatively minor, they referred you to blood tests or to a specialist, you should tell your insurer about that. And I think the key message is, if in doubt, call it out to your insurer. They can then make a decision about whether they need to know about it, and you've done everything that you needed to do.
Yeah, worth saying, lots of people are on weight loss jabs, but the thing that your insurer wants to know at that stage is, well, very simply, there must be an underlying condition behind that, diabetes, obesity or whatever. We need to know about that.
And just picking up on that weight loss jabs point, Simon, sometimes there are medical advancements that are prescribed by a doctor, weight loss jabs being one of them. Sometimes these things are actually done entirely privately, away from the medical experts, and you just do it for yourself. When do you have to declare something, and when don't you have to declare something?
To be on the safe side in both states, because clearly if you're having an interaction with the doctor and she or he is prescribing weight loss jabs, you need to declare that. And if you are, as it were, self-administering, then that's relevant, because it is presumably because of a pre-existing condition like obesity or diabetes, and your insurer needs to know about that too.
And we want to make sure that ultimately you are covered, so you haven't got to worry about anything on your holiday. And so buying your insurance as soon as you've bought that holiday gives you the maximum protection, and make sure that we can be there for you if anything does happen and you need us quickly.
And when travelling with family, particularly little ones, children, you need to be pretty comprehensive when it comes to them too.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that anybody that's on the policy has got needs to be declared. Like I said, even if it feels relatively minor, or it's something that you're no longer suffering with, so you've had a bout of treatment and you're better, or you're feeling better, you're better off telling your insurer about it. Beyond that, there's a few other things to think about. So country of travel is sometimes an issue. So you might be going to the US, you haven't checked properly and you've bought a policy for Europe. That can be problematic. So make sure that you've covered the areas that you're going to. And in addition to that, I think it's also about making sure that you've got cover if you're going on a more specialist kind of trip. Winter sports, cruise cover, that kind of thing. Because again, some standard policies won't cover you. And I think there's a lot of variety in what will and won't be covered, so check carefully.
I always imagine, Simon, that you have one of the most full inboxes of anyone I possibly know. You will have heard and read and seen some worst case scenarios when something's gone wrong on somebody's holiday and their insurance wasn't in order. Can you just paint a picture for us of maybe that sort of worst case scenario that you've come across?
Yeah, really, really typical case, I am so sorry to say, is somebody who's got a pre-existing heart condition, respiratory problem, and they decide, maybe because they've been badly advised or somebody has said, oh yeah, it will cost you 3 times as much for the insurance, they've decided not to insure, and they take out maybe a standard policy, and well, the first thing that happens if you do fall ill is that quite reasonably, since you've declared that you are in good health, your insurer will want to check with your GP that is the case, and if they suddenly find that there's quite a long history of this, they'll simply need to say, sorry, we cannot, in all fairness, cover you for something we didn't know about, and that leaves them with quite often tens of thousands of pounds in hospital bills, particularly you mentioned the US for transatlantic travel. And well, unfortunately there are plenty of GoFundMe pages out there trying to help people who have been landed with massive medical bills. And the whole point of insurance is so that you do not, when you're in a difficult position anyway abroad, you don't have to worry about money.
And I think with that as well, the danger is you have the mentality that it's not going to happen to me, and it's not always about illness. You could be very healthy, but if you have a fall, you have an accident, those kind of things are also what you're going to need cover for. So yeah, really important to make sure you've got the right cover in place.
And that immediacy of purchase, it's all important, Jamie.
Yeah, exactly. People have booked holiday a couple of months in advance. Suddenly there's media reports of problems with cancellations of flights, and are they going to be able to get connecting flights? That can become a real problem. If you insure when you buy, you give yourself the maximum protection and you get the best value from the policy that you're buying then on that basis.
Question for you, Jamie. When were you glad to have had travel insurance in your life, on your travels?
I actually had, I got slightly an injury actually from jumping in the pool. Had to go and see somebody there for some, what was in the end relatively minor treatment, but I was glad to know that I had that protection behind me and I could use it if I needed to. And for a very small excess, I was covered for the cost of it.
And Simon, I mean, my goodness, you're probably the best travel person I know. When have you had to turn to your travel insurer?
Well, I've always been very grateful for travel insurance, but I think I'm quite a good bet because I'm delighted to pay for travel insurance, and so far, I'm looking for wood to touch here, I have not needed to claim, but I still regard it as money extremely well spent.
That's a no claims bonus and a half there from Simon. Final questions for you. Where are you both off to next on your travels? Jamie first.
I'm going to Morocco in a couple of weeks' time, so just outside of Marrakesh, so really looking forward to that. Hopefully the weather will be nice.
I'm off to the hotspot of the Caucasus. Fantastic area. I've not been to Armenia before, but I've heard great things about it. I have been to Georgia, but I'm going back there because it's a fantastic country to go to, and I know that I've got rock solid travel insurance.
Well, safe travels to you both. Jamie Hersant, Head of Travel Claims at Admiral, and Simon Calder, thanks for joining us today, and thank you for watching.